Good afternoon, and welcome to Cyversity Engage webinar. Today's topic is Operating in the New World Order, Information and Security. Will we ever believe in anything again? Our Cyversity Engage program is designed to grow, to develop, and highlight careers, opportunities, and contributions of diverse talent within cybersecurity. Some of the topic areas covered are career development, career spotlight, transitions, leadership, and technology talks. Our Cyversity Engage also includes diversity calendar highlights listed here. Today, for our agenda, we'll start off with introductions to our guest speaker, Roy Hadley, followed by his presentation. After that, you, the attendees, get to engage with our guest speaker. We'll have a Q&A session moderated by Rick Hart, the Director of Career Placement. After that, we'll present you with information on Cyversity membership benefits. That will be presented by Christopher Cutts, the Director of Membership. And to close us out, I'll provide you with information on upcoming webinars, Engage webinars, local chapter events, and then you will also be provided with the survey. We ask that you complete the survey to provide feedback on today's webinar. And then also, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available later on our website under on-demand resources. I also ask you to communicate with us on the Atlanta Slack Cyversity chapter or email us at atlanta@cyversity.org. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Roy Hadley, who is special counsel with the law firm of Adams and Reese, LLP. Roy is a technology evangelist and is passionate about cybersecurity, big data, and the future of all things digital. So as you see here, Roy has a list of accomplishments and recognitions. So I will highlight a few and then turn it over to Roy to share additional information about himself before he presents. Roy has over 30 years as a trusted advisor to high growth businesses, government, and family businesses worldwide. He is a former chief privacy officer and general counsel in the corporate sector. He is on the advisory board for the National Technology Security Coalition. He is also on the Technology Association of Georgia Board of Directors, where he co-chairs the TAG Social Justice Task Force and also chairs the Board of Information Security Society. He has been named to the City of Atlanta CIO Advisory Board and was recently honored by the State of Georgia House of Representatives for his work in cybersecurity, particularly on behalf of the state and local governments and governmental agencies. Roy was also named a 2021 cybersecurity leader for Security Magazine. He is a frequent speaker and author and has appeared in many publications such as the Wall Street Journal, as well as radio and television, USA Today, Fox News, Compliance Week, Homeland Security Today, and a list of others listed here. Roy also hosts Cyber Shorts as well as Cyber Minute on LinkedIn, where he discusses the latest issues regarding cybersecurity and interviews leaders in technology and the security field. So with that, I'd like to introduce you and turn it over to Roy Hadley. Roy, thank you so much for being here today and being our guest speaker. We are honored to have you.
All right, thank you so much. That was, the great thing about introductions is you can write your own and write in there what you want. But I think the takeaway from that is that I've been at this cybersecurity thing for a while and have really, I'm a nerd in the sense that I really love the cybersecurity area. I love data. I love trends. I love how things are always changing. And that's going to be the topic of discussion today. We're going to talk about something that traditionally is not what you would call cybersecurity, but it really is. And you'll see how we kind of get back around to cybersecurity once it's all said and done. We're going to talk about misinformation and disinformation today, and really kind of where we are with respect to facts and all of that. And, one of my favorite sayings is I hear people all the time say, you get one side of the story, you get another side of the story, and the facts are in the middle somewhere. And what I would say to you is the facts are where they are. They're not in the middle just because you have this side of the story or that side of the story. The facts are where they are. Now how we interpret facts is all facts. That's going to always be the, kind of where the rubber hits the road. And we're going to talk about things like cognitive bias today and, how people interpret facts based upon where they're coming from and why that ultimately matters to all of us in the cybersecurity world. So again, we're going to kind of, I'm giving you forewarning, we're going to do kind of a do loop here and ultimately get back to why cybersecurity matters and why misinformation and disinformation really matters, especially when you start talking about humans and the human element of cybersecurity. So now I'm sharing my screen and in theory, if I press some buttons, there we go, press some buttons and all of a sudden things start happening. I always like to start off with a little thing. This is just your little data in the dump there and people stealing your data, something that as cybersecurity practitioners, we always need to be aware of and always need to be thinking the filter of that. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that I always tell cybersecurity professionals is use your imagination because the bad actors are. And we tend to look at things very, kind of myopic, but they're looking at it through a bigger lens. And we need to refocus our lenses as cybersecurity professionals to make sure that we're being creative and imaginative in how we attack defense and how we attack cybersecurity because our adversaries are. And disinformation and misinformation right now are two of the biggest vectors that the bad actors are using to get to your networks. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about who am I, Roy. We've already talked about that. I got a glorious introduction, probably not deserved, but I'm thankful for that. We're going to talk about misinformation and disinformation. And then we're going to talk about the future of data and why disinformation and misinformation matters with respect to the future of data and how we attack cybersecurity. I'm going to talk about 30-ish, 35 minutes, leave time for Q&A today, and hopefully we will be able to get some, traction with you around why you need to have your antennas up around this sort of stuff. What is misinformation? Misinformation is false information that is just spread regardless of intent. It's just bad information that, people spread out there. And it may be that they don't know any better. Again, you start talking about people and humans, and people are going to really spread information and their thoughts based upon their biases coming in. And I'm not saying biases in a bad way. It's just, kind of what it is. I have more than one child, multiple children, and any parent knows, you think you're giving the same inputs and the same opportunities to your children, and they turn out wildly different. Information is the same. You can look at a same set of facts. Three bystanders can see the same accident on the road. And when the police ask them what happened, you're going to get three very different stories usually. Three, this person will say, oh, they ran the red light. This one will say, no, the light was green. This one will say it's yellow. And information is like that, depending upon your biases that you're bringing, that's how you're going to interpret it. Disinformation is the same false information, but it's put there with an intent to mislead. And that's really where, our focus is on, that information that is put there with an intent to mislead. And you're seeing more and more of that. And, the reason you're seeing it is because the way algorithms are created in social media, Facebook, Twitter, to a lesser extent, LinkedIn, the algorithms are designed to foster engagement, because if you engage more, you're on the platform more, you're looking at more stuff, they can sell more relevant ads based upon your engagement. So we always have to remember that social media is designed to get you to engage. And so if you're looking at Facebook and you look at articles around gun rights, around abortion, those hot topics around immigration, the more you look at that, the more the algorithms will serve up, information related to those topics. And then as you engage more, your profile becomes that you will get more ads, relevant ads based upon your profile. So if you are a Second Amendment person, and all of this is not a political speech, this is just my version of the facts. But if you're a Second Amendment person, you are going to look at more articles around the Second Amendment, around gun rights. And then because your profile shows that, then you'll start getting more ads about Second Amendment gun rights and why you need to preserve them and those sorts of things. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're bombarded with things that reinforce the beliefs that you already have. That's, pro or con, doesn't matter with respect to gun rights. And so why? Because you will engage more likely if you're seeing content that's relevant to you. And so the bad actors are using disinformation for various purposes, but today we're going to talk about how it's being used from a cybersecurity standpoint and why we need to have our antennas up around that. Disinformation, fake news is not new. Here's an article from Harper's Magazine, October of 1925, and it's called Fake News and the Public. The issue back then was you didn't have the social media that can amplify it. I always laugh with people because everybody has this. It's actually my phone. I just have a little case, but everybody has a phone. Everybody from, 10 years on up to 89, 90, you have a phone, and that phone is a vehicle for amplifying messages. It's a vehicle for connecting. And the bad actors understand that. They understand that if I can, you're bombarded with things all day long, you're going to react to them. And that's what they use. So what are some of the impacts of misinformation or disinformation? The assault on the US Capitol. Again, none of this political, but that is being shown, I think, that, the assault was amplified by social media and misinformation or disinformation. COVID, same thing, misinformation and disinformation. We're well over 1 million deaths from COVID. But, if you ask certain people whether COVID's real, depending upon your biases coming in, COVID is either a hoax, is, fake, or is the Black Plague, reincarnated, and we need to deal with it as such. What is it? Is it somewhere in the middle? Probably, but not necessarily so, because again, facts are what they are. It's our perception of those facts that leads us to believe that it's here, there, or somewhere in the middle. And we should always believe that. So you start talking about cognitive bias and biases and what people believe, and you look and it's amplified by in how we perceive things. So if you ask if the election was stolen from Donald Trump, Republicans overwhelmingly, or not overwhelmingly, the majority believe that it was stolen. Democrats, the vast majority believe that it was not. Mask, another one of those hot topics that became political. You know, is it important to wear a mask? 52% said yes or don't know. 48% said yes. And you know, it's not shown here in this graphic, but it really, to a large extent, ran upon party affiliation. If you were a Republican, you tended to say you shouldn't have mask mandates. If you're a Democrat, you should. Why? Because most Democrats are going to read articles that reinforce their beliefs. They're going to look at networks, CNN, that reinforce those beliefs, whereas Republicans tend to think and look at it differently. They'll look at Fox News. They'll read more conservative publications that tend to say, no, we're not going to have masks. It's an infringement. We have the right not to. You know, we need to open up the economy, all of those things, but they're constantly being reinforced by the media that they are absorbing on the left or on the right. And unfortunately, you know, that divide, that partisan divide is growing broader. So if you look in '94, you didn't see it as much. You had a lot more bipartisanship. Now, you know, it's almost becoming a bright line. You know, if you are a Republican, the election was stolen. If you're a Democrat, it wasn't. If you're a Republican, you have to have gun rights. If you're a Democrat, you have to have, you know, some kind of control on guns and assault weapons. Abortion, you know, there are all of these things, these topics, immigration, that are constantly being reinforced in our minds because of the media that we consume. I would venture to guess that a small percentage of the people that are listening today would watch both CNN and Fox News, and or read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times or the Washington Post and the Journal, you know, and really try to absorb both sides of the aisle, so to speak. That partisan divide is getting bigger, as I said, and I just don't think that it's going to shrink, not anytime soon, not according to polls and you know, just general everyday living when you see how people react to certain things. You know, unfortunately, as evidence of that partisan divide, and this came from a CBS News poll, you know, Republicans, 57% of Republicans see Democrats as enemies, as opposed to 43% see them as just opponents. Somebody on the other side doesn't quite have the belief. Democrats see 41% of Republicans as enemies, 59% as opponents. And, you know, part of that is because, again, in my opinion, the conservative media, and I hesitate to call it conservative media, but the Fox Newses of the world and the websites and Breitbart tend to espouse a more confrontational message, right? And for us as Americans, I think somehow we've got to figure out how to get past that disinformation and misinformation and stop seeing each other just because you don't share all of my beliefs as an enemy, as opposed to just somebody on the other side of the aisle. You know, that's one of those things that as controllers of data, we've got to figure that out. You're starting to see it play out in Ukraine and Russia. You know, you've got misinformation and disinformation, depending upon who you ask, what casualties happen, how many casualties, how many Russian casualties. You ask Russia, it's 400, I'm making up these numbers. You ask Ukraine, it's 40,000. Most recently last week with the sinking of the Russian guided missile destroyer, and originally Russia said it was a fire and that exploded the ordnance. Ukraine said, no, we shot 2 missiles into it, and that's what exploded the ordnance on board the ship and sank it. So, who do you believe in that sense? You see pictures of females, Ukrainian females in the armed services smiling here. Is that true, or is that misinformation or disinformation, to make the war more appealing to somebody or the resistance more appealing to somebody? We don't know. And that becomes problematic. It used to be in the old world, you had 3 news channels here in the United States, CBS, NBC, and ABC, and they viewed themselves as journalists. They skewed a little bit to the right or to the left, but they still view their role as telling the facts and telling the truth. That's not the case anymore. I can start a news outlet on Twitter or on Facebook today, and depending upon how vitriol I want to be, either to the right or to the left, I can get thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of followers very quickly and put something out there and say it is a fact. And based upon biases, people will believe me. And so you're seeing that in Ukraine, and you will continue to see it. It's going to be based upon which side you believe in. We had a young lady that I knew from Russia, and when she came to the United States, she was amazed at how the United States actually was, because she had been fed propaganda in Russia around, life in the United States and what we did here or didn't do. You see it in the war. Putin's ratings, his approval ratings have skyrocketed. Last time I saw them, they were like 81%, which is phenomenal for a sitting president, or whatever his title is. Phenomenal. Why? It's because he controls the media, and the war in Ukraine is being kind of fashioned as this kind of defense of Russia and defense of Russian people. And so the people in Russia are rallying around him. And, that misinformation, or in that case, probably disinformation, is serving very well his political purpose. So we'll continue to see that in all conflicts. You see it in Hungary, you see it in a lot of different countries around the world. Control the media, and I'm using that term very broadly, control the access to information, and you control the hearts and minds. And so that's going to be very important going forward. Why does all this matter? Again, just confirmation bias. Here's a definition of it. And it's, just that innate thing that makes you search for, find, and then ultimately believe information that fits what you already believe. And that's just going to be important, especially from a cybersecurity defense standpoint. Again, let's talk about confirmation bias. These are Democrats and Republican responses to basically the same question. And this was coming out of Indiana University, a social media survey they did. Now, this was back in November 2020. I don't think it's narrowed. If anything, I think it has expanded. You ask people, did Trump fake COVID, him having COVID? Democrats say yes, Republicans say no. Democrats believe Trump had a stroke, and that's why he was acting the way he was. Republicans, no. Democrats believe he cut Social Security. Republicans, no. Republicans believe that Fauci paid Wuhan to come up with this COVID thing. Democrats, Republicans believe Vice President Harris is not a US citizen. And these are big numbers, 38% of Republicans. 54% of Republicans believe that the CDC faked COVID, that voting machines were rigged, Biden is mentally ill. And so you just see, depending upon what question you ask, that bias showing on the Democratic side related to questions about Trump, to the Republican side about related to Biden and his presidency. So you see it, and I think you will continue to see it. It matters because ultimately, people say, technology, people, processes, all of those things, that triad for cybersecurity, the processes, the technology and people. And so, from a technology standpoint, it doesn't matter as much. It matters, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. From a process standpoint, it matters because you're going to have the processes in place to help your people understand that disinformation and misinformation is out there. And ultimately, from a people standpoint, you're going to have to help your people to understand misinformation and disinformation and how it's going to relate to possible phishing attacks and spear phishing attacks. The traditional attack vectors, excuse me, are your networks, your software, your endpoints, and your people. Excuse me. And so we're going to, continue. We're talking about people because people are the ones that are going to be affected by misinformation, disinformation, and are going to make decisions on what to click and what not to click based upon their cognitive biases around that misinformation. And so our job, our challenge is to train them to think through these things, not from a political standpoint or an ideological standpoint, but just from a cybersecurity standpoint. Because you start seeing the compromised emails and those sorts of things. Here's a little funny example. I'm a Georgia fan, so I'll use Clemson as a, kind of an example. And so you start seeing things like these emails coming through. If you're a football fan, you get an email, not like this one, but, related to your favorite team. And, we're having a reception. You've been chosen for a reception to meet Coach Sweeney or Swinney. And you're like, oh man, I really want to meet Dabo or Kirby or, one of the big coaches. And you click that link because, they have done a social profile on you. They know that you are a football fan. They can see it on your LinkedIn, and see it on your Facebook. Everything is Bulldogs or Tigers or whatever it may be. And, so then you're socially engineered, and this is an old one, to click that link, to go to the reception and put in your credit card information because the reception is $25 or your PayPal information. And all of a sudden you've been compromised because you have a bias towards that. And, and we got some more little Dabo, Trevor Lawrence emails. But then you start seeing stuff like this. I got this not too long ago, and it's my March account statement for PayPal. Now, it used to be that these types of things had spelling errors and mistakes and things like that. I have a PayPal account. This looks legit. It looks just like the ones I would normally get. I have a cognitive bias towards, I'm probably going to click that link because I have PayPal, I've surrounded myself. And so I'm not going to have the radar filters that I would normally have to say, okay, is this legit? You've got to train your people to do that. They get an email because, again, this cognitive bias, and I can find it on your Facebook, I can find it on your LinkedIn, and know that you are a Democrat and more liberal or progressive. And so I'm going to probably send you something that says, Trump is trying to, stop legitimate immigration, click here to help us. Okay, because I believe this and I'm surrounded with it, I click that link. On the Republican side, Biden is trying to expand Social Security and cut off your gun rights. I'm going to click that link because of that cognitive bias from my ecosystem and my ecosphere. So as cybersecurity professionals, our job, our challenge, our opportunity is to continuously educate people that, regardless of what your ideology is, you still have to think through these things as to whether you click the link, whether you believe it or not, whether it's true or not. We've got to figure out how to teach our people to be more critical thinkers around this and the misinformation and the disinformation, because it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Why are the bad actors doing this? We tend to think as humans in ideological terms, they believe in the Second Amendment, they believe in abortion, they believe in immigration. And most times what you'll find is the bad actors don't care. They don't really care. They just want to make money by stealing your credentials, your data, your personal account information, all of those things. I just had a client last week that lost $125,000, small business, because of an email compromise that was originated by an email compromise, but because of the cognitive bias of the employee, they were more apt to click that link that they ultimately clicked versus somebody who may have been on the other side of the ideological spectrum would not have clicked that link. But it's again that social engineering now taking advantage of your cognitive biases to steal the data, to install malicious programs, ransomware, all of those sorts of things. And so now we look at the future of data and what we believe and how we believe it. And again, these things are only going to get worse. We tend to rely on cloud storage and, think that that's safe. One of my favorite sayings is from Willie Sutton. And somebody asked him one time, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. And so now as practitioners in cybersecurity, we're going to have to continue to be more cognizant and keep our antennas up, because now as data is aggregated into these cloud storage facilities and that sort of thing, that's where the money is, that's where the data is. So those become the attack vectors. If I can compromise a vendor, then I've compromised all of their customers. Why go after one customer? Because if I can get the vendor, I can get them all. We have to be thinking about that. New technologies. You start talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence. All of those algorithms that reinforce our cognitive biases are going to get better. They get better every day. You look at computers that do chess or the game Go. It used to be that in the early days, the computers, Go masters just walked all over them. Now you're hard pressed to find a Go master that can win a game against the computers because the algorithms are getting smarter. What does that mean? They're going to get smarter on the disinformation, on the misinformation. I mean, now you have the ability to, and it looks really real, to create fake videos of somebody talking, and it looks just like them. In the old days, you could tell because it was kind of choppy, or you could see a neckline, or the mouth didn't move quite right. Now they look really real. And so our ability to filter that is going to become more difficult, which means that from a cybersecurity perspective, from the human element side, it's going to be more difficult for our people to, kind of filter it. And so we have to continuously train them on how to, you may not spot that fake video, but in that video, you don't click the link, right? That's the line of defense that we're talking about. And again, I always love this picture with the Terminator and the Skynet and all of that. And in a lot of ways, if we're not getting there, we are already there. And that's the scary part. But from a cyber perspective, that's also the opportunity for each of us as practitioners to really kind of add value to our enterprises. So all that said, bottom line, you always have to have your antennas up, and we have to train our people to have their antennas up. The cyber world is changing. Misinformation and disinformation is out there. It's been out there, as we showed, fake news since 1925 at least with Harper's Magazine. But it's increasingly becoming a problem, both from a societal standpoint and from a security and information security and management standpoint. And so going forward, our challenge as practitioners is going to be to stay on top of it, to understand it. And so I challenge you to not think, kind of small on what cyber is and the threats, but to really expand your horizon, because it's that expanded horizon that is going to be the place where you can add value. It's going to be the place where the game is being played from here on out. And so we have to be there, both in our actions and in our thoughts. And so with that, that's kind of my thoughts on misinformation, disinformation, and really how they relate to cyber and each of us as practitioners in cybersecurity. So with that, I'll release the sharing of my screen and entertain any questions if there are any. Thank you for listening. And so Rick, I'll turn it over to you, I think.
Yes, Roy. Thank you so much for that. So if you have any questions for Roy, please don't hesitate. You can drop them in the chat as I'm monitoring the chat, and I will make sure that we relay that question over to Roy for his response. So Roy, I have a question just kind of get us started. I heard you were talking about the cyberverse and how we need to start thinking bigger and broader.
Right.
Gaming, the gaming part of the cyberverse. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of people are aware of what goes on in that area as far as quote unquote phishing, right?
Right.
Could you kind of talk to some things that we could tell our younger children to be aware of, or we as parents should be cognizant of in that arena,
right.
that gaming arena?
Right. So great question. And really depending upon the age of your children, I would argue that they probably don't need to be gaming by themselves anyway. Their computer needs to be set up in the den or the living room where you can walk by and see it. That is going to filter a lot of bad behavior on the part of kids. As a parent, what you need to be aware of is, again, anytime, and I'll say this to children too, and you have to make the conversation age appropriate, but anytime somebody asks you for personal information, your gaming name may be GeoBot325, but if somebody asks you what your real name is, or where do you live, or how many sisters or brothers you have, how old they are, anytime somebody asks a personal question in a gaming environment, that should raise your antennas to at least a level yellow, right? Because that's going to be the first, evidence of grooming a kid. And, a kid isn't going to have a lot of financial information, right? But they are going to have a lot of personal information. Where do you live? What's your phone number? What's your email? What's your, TikTok handle or your Instagram handle? Those sorts of things. And so I tell children, if somebody asks you for those things in a gaming platform, that's a problem. Don't give it to them, right? Because that's that's the first step in grooming a kid, because again, you're not really looking for financial information. They don't have bank accounts that you can raid and get, $10,000 from, but they do have themselves. And you see a lot of bad actors that are on gaming platforms. Why? Because just like Willie Sutton said, I rob banks because that's where the money is. For predators, they're on the gaming platforms. Why? Because that's where their potential victims are. And so you always have to be cognizant of that as a parent, and in an age appropriate way, make sure your children understand that. And if there's one takeaway from a gaming standpoint, that would be it. Plus, monitoring what your kids do, where they are when they are doing the gaming, and set limits on hours for gaming. I had a client one time it's not a gaming situation, but her daughter was being bullied. And so she said, well, what can I do? Should I call the police? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, first off, depending upon what the behavior is on the other side, you may need to call the police. It may be a crime what this person or people are doing on the other side. So, you need to think about that. If it is in fact a crime or she's in danger, physical danger, then you do need to call the police. But we kind of got into it a little bit, and I said, well, when is it happening? What's happening? And come to find out, usually the bullying was done. It was her friends, overnight, 2, 3 in the morning. And, I think the kid was at that time 10. And my question to the parent was, well, why does your 10-year-old have their phone at 2 in the morning anyway? Take the phone. At a minimum, they won't be bullied overnight. The kid will have to do it tomorrow at school or whatever, and then you can deal with that in a different way. But it was like, be a parent. You've got to be a parent first before anything, and be in a position to make those hard decisions to keep your child safe. And so I say that the same thing with gaming. Your kid should not be gaming overnight, at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, because again, that's where the predators are and are going to be hanging out in greater numbers. Why? Because they know that more likely than not, a kid that's gaming at 2 in the morning is not being supervised by a parent, right? And so you have to, as a parent, just, put our thinking caps on and say, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z continuously to keep my kids safe.
Thank you, Roy. I don't see any questions posted in the chat. So I will ask also, okay, Cassandra has one.
Okay.
Training employees is essential for helping to safeguard organizations.
Right.
She would like to hear more about what we can do to help other family members to have an awareness regarding phishing and other email scams.
Okay. So, it's interesting because, again, you have to do it age appropriate. So my parents who are older, I continuously reinforce to them just basics. And when I say basics, what do I mean? Don't click the link. Your bank is not going to send you something to ask you for your account information. Your bank is not going to call you to ask you for your bank account information. The IRS is not going to call you and say, if you don't pay me right now via PayPal, we're going to put you in jail. Your kid, if somebody says, hey, we've got your kid hostage in Botswana, and unless you pay us $10,000, we're going to harm them. Well, now think about it. Is your kid actually in Botswana? And so what I do for my parents is constantly reinforce that message every week-ish. I'll say something different to just constantly reinforce that message. And as they get older, you kind of see the cognitive decline. And so then you need to put your antennas up a little bit more. You need to say, okay, do we need as siblings children monitor bank accounts? Do we need to put in place, maybe not monitoring accounts, but before an account can be changed, you have to, the bank or the investment company has to come through us. Do we need to put credit freezes on their accounts? So that at a minimum, if somebody's trying to do something, they're going to have to unfreeze their credit and come through us, just kind of another safeguard. One of the things I do is I look at, my parents, I help them with their phones. And so what does that mean? I help them with their settings. And kids, same thing. This is as applicable for that too. Look at the phones, help them with the settings, help them understand that you don't need to share your contacts with, WhatsApp, right? Why do I need to share my contacts? If I know who I want to talk to, that's who I talk to. I don't need to give global carte blanche access to that. I don't need to, with Facebook, agree to share my data. Looking at those privacy settings, helping them go through their apps and change those to be more secure, helping look at location settings. There is no reason that, Instagram really needs to know my location, right? Just don't. There's no reason really that pictures that you take on your phone need to be tagged with your location. Now, admittedly, I'm a little on the way, conservative side in terms of locking stuff down. I'll have my stuff locked down. And I understand that most people aren't going to be where I am on that, but there are things that you can do like that to help your parents, your children, your siblings, yourself, to be more cyber secure. And I focus on the phone only because the phone is the main vector, because that's where we have all of our apps. That's where now people have, where they can transfer money, Zelle, Venmo. That's where, you have PayPal and your bank apps, where you can do your banking. Funny story, kind of funny. I was at lunch probably about a month ago, and it was an outside venue, and a guy came by, kind of bumming for money. And, he looked relatively prosperous, but he said, well, do you have any spare change? And my response was, no, I don't have any spare change. And he said, well, if you have your phone, I take Venmo and Zelle. And I'm looking and I'm like, okay, first off, just philosophically, if you got a phone and you can take Venmo and Zelle, you shouldn't be out here bumming money from folk. But, it's just a testament to how, as a society, we are morphing into all, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And with that acceptability, I'm making up a word here, becomes a cognitive bias that this is okay. And then we tend to have a misstep. You're putting in, and he was saying, well, you just put your stuff in and I, transfer it. Well, do I really want to put my account information into his phone, right? Whoop, antennas go up. And so, helping your parents or your kids to understand, no, you don't need to transfer $5 or $2 through your Zelle or Venmo account to somebody. That's a potential attack vector. That's a potential vulnerability that is happening that they just need to be aware of. So it's that constant reinforcement, because you can't mandate that your parents or your kids go to training like you can an employee. In an employment situation, we can have training once a month, which is, what I recommend. Doesn't have to be an hour long, it could be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just constant reinforcement. And so for your family members and your friends, it's that constant reinforcement, but on a lesser scale. Oh, wow, Mom, I read this article today in the paper where, they were preying on old people, and they were trying to, saying that it was a hospital and they needed your Medicare information, because you had an outstanding bill, and they were faking, they were getting people, people were giving them their Medicare information. Don't you do anything like that, right? And that's how you do it. You know, you take kind of real world situations and you use it as a mechanism to reinforce the threat and reinforce what their response to that threat will be. So you're helping them identify the threat and then helping them to respond to the threat. And so that's what you do for family members on an ongoing basis. I call it just constant behavioral training in a nice sort of way.
Right.
Same thing with kids. You know, I give, you know, my kids, I'll say, wow, you know, I locked down my credit on Equifax and the TransUnion and, you know, Experian. You know, you can do that for free. You ought to do that. Oh, Dad, that's a great idea. Bam, right? You know, and it's that instead of lock down your credit, because they're not going to respond to that, right?
Right, correct. Right, thank you so much. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to end the time and I'm going to pass it back to Cassandra.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for
Thank you so much,
listening. My pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate your time, a wealth of information. I have several other questions, but we're short on time now, so I might have to email them to you to get some input. Okay.
Absolutely.
But
always
thank you so much again. Rick, thank you for moderating the QA session.
My pleasure.
Yes. All right, so now, I can get my screen to change. Yes, I'm going to give you some information about Cyversity and what our mission is, and turn it over to Chris, our Director of Membership, to provide more information to you about our membership and the benefits. So the mission of Cyversity is to achieve the consistent representation of women and underrepresented minorities in the cybersecurity space through programs designed to diversify, educate, and empower. Cyversity tackles the great cyber divide with scholarship opportunities, diverse workforce development, innovative outreach, and our mentoring programs. So Chris, if you can chime in now and give us some information about the benefits.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cassandra. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Cutts. I'm the Director of Membership with Cyversity of Atlanta. Some great opportunities that we have for our members are mentorship processes. We have apprenticeships, opportunities, places where you can explore your path within cybersecurity through CyberSeek, as well as skill assessment to see where you are, utilizing the niche framework. We have engaged events that we have monthly. It's like this event here. I mentioned about the mentorship opportunities. We have scholarships that you guys can apply for. Also, we have a SAN scholarship that you guys can apply for that we have yearly. It gives you guys some training to understand more about your role and your path, utilizing CyberSeek as well as the NIST framework. And also, again, getting the SAN training will take you up to the next step. Also, with the Connect portion, we have several opportunities for us with Slack, as well as a couple of meetups we're going to be having later this year, where you guys can be a part of the community and also meet some of the members within the local chapter. So I look forward to you guys joining. Membership for students is $20, and I think the total membership for our professionals is $100. So if you guys have any questions, any concerns, please reach out to me, and I'll be able to assist you guys via LinkedIn or via my actual email as well. Back to you, Cassandra.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate that. We're going to talk a little bit about a few upcoming events. Our next chapter event will be held on May 25th at the Cobb Galleria during Secure World Atlanta Conference. Our guest speaker will be Giovanni Farr, who is going to speak on the evolution of crypto and DeFi hacks. So be sure to join us there. We do have some discount pass codes available. I just posted the correct promotion codes for the passes in the chat session so that I hope you can enjoy the conference and come out and support the chapter. It will actually be our first in-person chapter meeting, so be sure to join us. Okay, got some screen problems here, excuse me. All right, and please also, we invite you to attend upcoming engaged events with other chapters as you see listed here. Roy, I am not certain, but we've got about a minute left. I do see we have one more question in the QA session that someone had.
Right.
Did
Yes,
you respond to them?
absolutely.
Okay.
And
All
you know,
right. Thank you so much.
absolutely. The question is basically, if I had to pick something, I'm paraphrasing here because there were two questions. I'm kind of paraphrasing them both together. You know, what would be the area in training that, you know, I would focus on? For the general populace, I would always, you know, right now and probably in the foreseeable future, focusing on that phishing and spear phishing and helping, you know, our employees recognize that information is going to be coming at them, and that information is, again, to kind of trigger those cognitive biases to make you click that link. And they're getting smarter and more intelligent, you know, and because of that, they're going to be, it's just easier to target an individual in a lot of ways. You know, you saw the individual targeting last presidential election, you know, where you were able to basically hit an individual with targeted ads and information, and that has not changed, it's gotten better. And so from a training standpoint, your employees need to understand that that information is coming, and regardless of how real it may look, you don't click the link. Or if somebody is changing the wiring instructions, you know, you need to have those processes and protocols in place to say, okay, I need to pick up the phone to confirm it, and I need to call a known number for that person, not the number if somebody says, hey, I'm on vacation, and so I'm in a condo in Pensacola, here's the number to call in Pensacola, and it's really me. No, you call their office number that you know, or the cell number. And so that kind of training, where you're training employees to constantly keep an eye out for it and think about it, but also giving them the tools to then react to those situations. And that's where I would put the emphasis on training, because that's where the attack vectors lie right now. And again, with the topic we talked about today, misinformation, disinformation, it's only going to be harder for an employee to kind of cut through the chaff to get to the wheat, so to speak. And so we need to train them and constantly and give them the tools. And training, you know, people tend to think of, okay, we're going to have quarterly training, we're going to have annual training. That's not good. That's not sufficient. It's best when it's constantly reinforced on you know, in small nuggets that people can digest and reinforce in a real world setting, situation type thing. That's where the training is going to be more effective, and where I would put my training dollars right now.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Roy. And we are now out of time. To our attendees, thank you so much for being here today. A lot of value, a lot of wisdom, a lot of great information on deciphering between mis and disinformation, right? Provided you with ways of how to control that or how to reduce that. But remember the awareness piece, the training to be aware and know when to click, when not to click, what things to look for that Roy just mentioned as well. So we greatly appreciate it. Appreciate your time today, Roy. And I ask that all attendees, please complete the survey that was presented earlier to provide us with feedback. And we'll see you next time. Hope that you will join us on May the 25th at Secure World. So remember to stay safe and stay connected. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.